What about you? You're very, very welcome, as always. Now, I would give you a heads up here. I'm talking about Gaza this week. I haven't talked about it for a few weeks. And if you don't want to hear any more about Gaza, then I would just move on and watch something else, right? But it's only take about 5 or 10 minutes. But I thought things seem to be coming to a head. And it made me ruminate somewhat on the whole thing. Like I was possibly one of the last people on earth to hear the news of the October 7th massacre in Israel. I just happened to be traveling back from Los Angeles and having missed my flight due to the wonderful Aer Lingus timetable. I ended spending the night sleeping on the floor of LAX airport. So whilst the horror was being played out in Israel, I was somewhere over the Atlantic. The scale and brutality of the Hamas attack was breathtaking. What was equally shocking was that the Israeli Defense Forces had been caught with their trousers down. Up until this date, the IDF and Israeli intelligence had rightly prided themselves as being one of the foremost defense forces in the world. They had all the technology, they had all the informants, they had all the money they could ever want, all for naught. Now we watched horrific scenes of innocent Israelis being slaughtered in their homes, on the streets, and even at a music concert. The sympathy of both me and the world was with Israel, and nobody would or could have argued they didn't have a right to defend themselves and their people. But even at this early stage, I, for one, had forebodings about what was about to happen. At the time, I was writing a column for the Irish News, and exactly 1 week after the October 7th attacks, I wrote this in my column. A humiliated Netanyahu will now attempt to redeem his standing by indulging in an all-out orgy of destruction, not only of Hamas, but the very state of Gaza. His actions will result in Israel being less secure and possibly end in a regional conflict. Now, both those predictions have sadly come true, though I could never have envisaged the level of brutality that would be brought about by the IDF and the Israeli government in their ambition to totally destroy Hamas. Over the subsequent years, Israel has used extrajudicial assassination, carpet bombing of residential areas, wiping out 75% of the buildings in Gaza. The taking of hostages without trial nor conviction, many of them being children. The ethnic cleansing of millions of Palestinians forced from their homes into tents. The systemic destruction of the Gazan health service with the deliberate murder of both doctors and health workers by the IDF forces. The denial of the world's media into Gaza while continuing to kill local journalists. The operation of torture camps where rape is common, missile attacks on Iran, and now the use of starvation as a weapon of war, with starving Palestinians shot and bombed as they attempt to find food at one of the 2 designated distribution points. Along with all this has been a concerted campaign of disinformation and misinformation both online and in mainstream media by the Israeli government. Now, this may seem insignificant in comparison to what I detailed just before that, but I would argue that so successful has been the Israeli disinformation campaign that it has damaged previously reputable media organizations forever. Right from the beginning, journalists warned of the danger of the perceived bias in favor of Israel in the reporting of the conflict. In the USA, CNN staff, they protested at the pro-Israeli slant of their organization, and they argued that it amounted to journalistic malpractice. While here on this side of the Atlantic, the BBC has forever tarnished its reputation by being overtly pro-Israeli in its coverage of the genocide being perpetrated in Gaza. Now, those of us who have lived through the Troubles, well, I think it gives us something of an insight into what is happening. Right? that we have a view on the vagaries of the supposed free press that other people may not have. For 35 years ago, exactly 35 years before the Hamas attack in October 1998, Margaret Thatcher, then Prime Minister, along with the Irish government, banned broadcasts of the voices of representatives from Sinn Féin and several other both Republican and Loyalist groups, both on television and radio in the UK. At the time, Margaret Thatcher argued that she was denying terrorists the oxygen of publicity, and the restrictions actually lasted until the IRA ceasefire of 1994. The result was a complete fiasco. Journalists rose up objecting to this infringement of the free press and found ways around the restrictions. One of them was the use of local actors to voice interviews with Sinn Féin leaders such as Gerry Adams. Indeed, I know an actor who told me that he owed Margaret Thatcher an awful lot, as her restrictions had helped him put his children through university. Now, the difference between then and now is that the media today seem completely subdued, cowed by both the government and their bosses. The BBC would argue that it has a responsibility to be impartial, yet every day it has demonstrated the exact opposite. I mean, just this week I came across this interview where an elected Palestinian politician was asked what he thought about what was happening in Gaza. Have a look at this. Watch this closely.
Adil, you mentioned the West Bank there. I just want to turn focus now to what's happening in Gaza. We're seeing images from a humanitarian crisis there. What's your reaction to that?
So I just was listening to your guest speaking before me. Only during the 48 hours, the last 48 hours, 22 people died of starvation in Gaza. So Gaza is under siege. Gaza, there is a war of genocide, and the starvation is part of this war of genocide. And by the way, this is part of the Netanyahu strategy, is to make the war against geography, against the demography, and against the Palestinian Authority. Against demography, we can see 3.5% of our people in Gaza have been killed, and more than 15% of them are wounded in the Gaza Strip, and 75% of all entire buildings in Gaza have been destroyed. And this is a real true war against demography, against the geography, in order to undermine the creation of an independent state of Palestine.
Adil, of course, Israel has condemned the ICJ legal process that alleges it's committing genocide and has denied those accusations. Thank you for your time, Adil Atiyah, who's from the Department of Ministry of Foreign Affairs from the Palestinian Authority. Thank you.
Well, did you notice it? No? Well, the BBC interviewer acted as a spokesperson for the Israeli government by ending the interview stating that Israel has condemned the ICJ legal process that alleges it's committing genocide and has denied those accusations. Now watch again and notice how the Palestinian politician raises his eyebrows in shock, as we should all.
Adil, of course, Israel has condemned the ICJ legal process that alleges it's committing genocide and has denied those accusations. Thank you for your time, Adil Atiyah.
What this means is that the Israeli government don't even need to provide a rebuttal of the crimes they're committing. The BBC will do that for them. The BBC coverage of the conflict has been a national disgrace. And it has tarnished its reputation. It has never missed an opportunity to offer Israeli apologists soft interviews where they've attempted to justify IDF atrocities and war crimes. And let me be clear here. I will not accept the slur that criticism of Israel and the IDF is in any way being supported by either Hamas or Hezbollah. Something again that the BBC brought in at the very start of the reporting, where they demanded that everyone who did criticize Israel started off by acknowledging that they did not support Hamas or Hezbollah. I am no supporter of either. For if I, a comic, on the other side of the world was able to correctly predict the reaction of the Netanyahu regime 1 week after October the 7th, both Hamas and Hezbollah knew well what was about to be unleashed on their people. Possibly, admittedly, like me, they may not have been able to foresee just how barbaric their response would have been, but that is no excuse for their actions. They were willing to sacrifice their people to promote their cause. So here I sit, Sunday the 27th of July 2025, while a ghetto has been created by the IDF on the western shores of Gaza, where the whole Palestinian population has been herded into about 18 miles of land and is being systemically starved, denied food and medication by the IDF. The response by the Israelis, they've eventually responded this week to the international pressure, and their response has been to offer to drop in a few pallets of food. This is an insult. Even before the war, hundreds of lorries daily needed to go into Gaza to feed its population. So what they're doing is again proving that this is not a mistake. This is a deliberate policy of weaponizing starvation as an instrument of war.
A tiny white bundle carried in a father's arms. A baby called Zainab wrapped by her mother, not in a swaddle, but a burial shroud.
My 5-month-old daughter died of malnutrition due to a lack of baby formula. The closure of the crossing and the ban on the entry of baby formula. With my daughter's death, many will follow. Their names are on a list that no one looks at.
Ezra is so malnourished her body was unable to produce milk enough to breastfeed her daughter. Zainab weighed more at birth than she did in death.
There is no substitute instead of milk to be given for them. So they are more prone for malnutrition.
Our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, well, he also has reacted. And he's going along with what the IDF and Israel are going to do by airdropping food into Gaza. Even though we know this won't work, even though it has been tried before and it has been a disaster.
Well, here the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says the UK is working with Jordan on plans to airdrop aid into Gaza and to evacuate children in urgent need of medical care. But will airdrops be effective in helping hungry people in the territory? As our correspondent Joe Winwood explains now, it is a strategy that is fraught with difficulties.
With pallets of aid struggling to enter on the ground, the UK and others will soon start dropping it from the air, repeating scenes we saw last year. But looking at the numbers, you can see why there are serious doubts that this is the solution. In the last round of aid flights, the US Air Force said each plane carried around 12,600 meals. This means it would take 160 flights every day to provide just one meal a day to the population of Gaza. Now, the combined transport fleet of the UAE and Jordanian air forces who would carry out the drops is only around 20 aircraft. Airdrops could deliver just a tiny fraction of the aid that trucks could.
And so there's an obvious solution in Gaza, which is to open the borders and allow agencies like the IRC, like our partners in the UN and humanitarian organizations, to bring aid in and to distribute it as we would do in any other crisis zone. Aid drops fundamentally are a grotesque distraction from that priority. We need access, not airdrops.
Now, France this week announced it is to recognise the state of Palestine, something both Ireland and other EU countries have done. But the UK still holds out. It refuses to do likewise. Again, indicating just how much it is in the pocket of Israel. For historically, if the UK did recognise the state of Palestine, it would be the closing of a circle, as it was Britain with the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which gave the green light for the creation of the State of Israel. In the words of the late Palestinian American academic Edward Said, the State of Israel was made by a European power about a non-European territory in flat disregard of both the presence and wishes of the native majority of residents in that territory. In short, the English gave away land which was never theirs in the first place. Following the Holocaust of World War II, which saw the slaughter of 6 million Jews, an exclusively European atrocity, by the way, which Palestine and Arabs had nothing to do with, well, this led in 1948 to what became known as the Nakba, when half of Palestine's Arab population of around 750,000 people were ethnically cleansed from their homes and land by Zionist terrorists intent on setting up the state of Israel. Israel continues to this day to deny the reality of the Nakba, arguing that the documented atrocities which occurred during it never took place, saying that the Arabs who were displaced, well, they left willingly, or that their expulsion was necessary or unavoidable. Does all that sound familiar to you? I would argue that the atrocities of the Netanyahu cabal and the IDF are the closing scenes of the 1948 Nakba. The Israeli far right saw the attacks of October the 7th as a springboard they could use to ethnically cleanse the whole of Gaza's Palestinian population. Their approach has been two-fronted. Having bombed Gaza into ruins, having leveled 75% of the buildings, something that's never been heard of since the Second World War, and corralled what's left of its population into those ghettos. They've been aided also by Jewish settlers and the IDF, supported by the IDF in the West Bank, who are terrorizing Arabs out of their land and homes. All of this is happening in an information blackout, with the world's press denied entry by Israel. Worse is that major media outlets have become nothing more than mouthpieces for the Israeli regime, aiding their genocidal ambitions. So here's the truth. See if you think I'm talking shite. Good. Brilliant. That's a result. Because at least it has got you thinking. Hopefully you will become a tad more critical of what you're being fed by both the BBC and other major news outlets. For instance, this is a wee deal. Have you noticed over the last few weeks, as the true horror of the starvation in Gaza hits home, that there have been fewer reports coming from Gaza, with instead a focus on pro-Palestinian support protests in Europe. Now, why would that be?
Shameful that the only story we have about Gaza on tomorrow's front pages is about pro-Gaza protests in the UK. We have, a few days ago, an Israeli parliamentarian said, we can do what we want. Nobody cares. We can kill 100 Palestinians in Gaza over one night, which has been happening with frequency, and nobody cares anymore. The world will just let us do it. And it seems that our media are determined to prove him right, because for weeks now, that is exactly what we've had. We've had a UK surgeon who's working out of a hospital in Gaza. He's been giving interviews and saying, this is what it's like. It's 100 killed one night, 150 killed another night. This is a slaughterhouse. This is like being in a slaughterhouse. We have seen the Israeli government absolutely say the quiet part out loud that what they're doing is ethnic cleansing in Gaza. And we are not covering it. It is not on the front pages of our newspapers. And that in itself is a disgrace. And that is what allows it to keep going on.
All I'm saying is that there are sleights of hand. There are nudges, such as a magician would do. A distraction. Don't look here, look over here. Don't see the atrocity that's happening here. I want you to look over here. Now, I am not a conspiracy theorist. Neither am I someone who believes from the river to the sea. I'm someone who believes in a two-state solution where Arabs are given back some of the land stolen from them by Israel and their allies. So all I'd urge you to do is be a tad more critical in your viewing of the news. Do not passively accept what is being served up to you. Instead, ask yourself simple questions. What am I not being told? And who does this report benefit? And I would really urge you to find news from outside the normal outlets. Have a look at Al Jazeera. Have a look at reports from France, reports from Italy. Just have a look. Don't just take it all in from BBC. And on a lighter note, I thought during the week, I had a moment during the week, I thought my wee mate Jimmy Bryson had an epiphany, because Jimmy is a very staunch Israel supporter. Doesn't matter what to do, Jimmy's with them. And I saw a tweet from him where he said, "Thoughts with Gaza tonight." I thought Jimmy's seen the light. Jimmy had seen the light. No. He was talking about the footballer. I should have known better. What I have noticed is that other celebrities, such as Bob Geldof and Piers Morgan, well, they've finally woken up and recognised that what is happening in Gaza is wrong, which is good, but they're 2 years late. What is really sad is that the vast majority of other celebrities and people in the media have remained stum. They say nothing. And I hope that will haunt them forevermore.
You'll do nothing. You hear me? You'll do nothing.